Again, a lot of familiar faces. So who's new? Who hasn't been here before? A couple of people here. All right. All right, so for those of you that are new, I'm Chris Bosley. I'm the president of the museum. Our museum, our mission is to tell the story of Michigan and its contribution to the defense of this country over the last 100 years or so, really World War I through today. So if you haven't had a chance to walk through the museum and the presentation's over, please feel free to go out there, take a look around. We do have, we still have some coffee.
Chris, is that microphone up?
So we do still have the coffee cake and coffee out there in the please eat the coffee cake, otherwise I will take it home and eat it. So this is a continuation of our fall-winter lecture series. We do have one more lecture left for this year, and that will be December 8th. It'll be the history of Selfridge Air Base. Steve Rosick will be here talking about Selfridge. We have a couple lined up for 2025. The first one will be January 12th. It will be on Ford Gliders in World War II by Kenneth Hafley. And then kind of a cool one at the end of January, we're going to have on January 26th, we're going to have Peter Warby here. For those of you who don't know the name, he was part of the 5th Estate, did a long-running radio program on the RIF, and he's going to be talking about the 5th Estate and the counterculture in the Detroit Metropolitan in Michigan during the Vietnam War. Peter's a cool dude. I've talked to him a lot. I think he's a little nervous about coming here, but I promised him that everybody will be cool. So again, these lectures are entirely by donation. In order to keep this, so we don't have to sell tickets and things like that, we have sponsorships. This year, our heavy tank sponsor was Robert and Dorothy Cosley, my parents back there at the back of the room. We also had a sponsor, Joan Alstover and Brian Monkowski, who are not here today. RJ and Michelle Hayden are two of our sponsors. RJ is the fine gentleman pouring the coffee out there, so we thank him if we get a chance. Richard McClellan, who's not here, and Craig and Kathy Wadecki were also sponsors for this year's series. So, please drop something in the donation box if you can. It's outside the door there. We also have the upcoming events flyers are out there on the table, along with membership forms and volunteer forms and all that fun stuff. So, I guess without any further ado, I will stop my commercial, and I will hand the microphone over to excuse me, to John Ruschell, who will talk to us about the Jam Handy Corporation.
Thank you, Chris. And if you can't hear me, tell me to speak up, okay?
Okay, thank you.
My name's John Ruschell. I worked for Sandy Corporation for 44 years and at the Jam Handy organization for 9 years before that. This is the story of a very interesting Detroiter. Can I ask for a show of hands? Has anybody heard of Jam Handy? Aha, well, quite a few. That's
Yeah, I lived a block away.
Wow. All right.
On
Well, we'll get into that.
On Palmer Avenue.
On what street?
Palmer, right next to the boulevard.
Okay.
My grandfather was a model
There's what?
for Jam Handy.
Oh, really? Well, they hired lots of them. How about Rochester or Rochester Hills? Anybody from there? Oh, okay, well, you'll find out why I asked that in a little while. I'm actually going to give this talk on December 10th at the OPC in Rochester. It's a senior center. So I've got a little section on that. This is a story of a very interesting Detroiter, Henry Jameson Handy, better known as Jam Handy. He lived a long and useful life, never really retiring. He was constantly busy, as you will soon learn. Chris. If we need to restart the show, when we've lost the power, technical challenge, so we will overcome.
I don't know.
Why don't I shut it down and turn it back on for a second? It'll just take a moment. Talk among yourselves. This has something to do with sound, whatever, we'll see what happens. Is it? Okay. All right. This is also the story of film, and specifically industrial filmmaking in Detroit. You'll see samples of films with all the production values of a Hollywood feature, but in this case, the car is the star. In 1989, Eastman Kodak sponsored a celebration of 100 years of film held at the Detroit Institute of Arts. I was asked to speak about Jam Handy and the Jam Handy organization. A fellow named Bob Kripke spoke about Ford's role in the use of film. In 1914, Ford Motor Company started its motion picture department, the first of any American industrial firm. When George Eastman marketed the first commercial transparent roll film in 1889, it enabled Thomas Edison to develop the first motion picture camera. George, Tom, and Henry Ford were friends. Here we have at the top a photo of George Eastman holding the film and Thomas Edison operating the camera. Seated on the porch is Thomas Edison and Henry Ford. They were all buddies. In 2001, I was asked to update the presentation and focus on the contributions of the Jam Handy organization to American commerce and culture for a series of lectures at Oakland University in celebration of Detroit's 300th anniversary. Which brings us to this year, the 80th anniversary of D-Day, and the question, who was Jam Handy? And what were the contributions of the Jam Handy organization to American commerce, culture, and World War II? I gave this talk at the Grosse Pointe War Memorial, where they had a series of programs in the month of May, all leading up to D-Day on June 6th, the celebration of D-Day on June 6th. That's the other thing you can do. If I don't change the slides, tell me to do it. Some of you might know the name from a popular events venue named the Jam Handy. It's located at 2900 East Grand Boulevard. This building served as a motion picture soundstage for the Jam Handy organization from 1935 until 1971. It was then sold to a company named Teletape Productions, based in New York, which used it rarely for a couple of years. In fact, in the hot, sweltering summer of 1972, I used it to produce some video training materials for Campbell Soup Company. It was not air conditioned. We rented airplane air conditioners to keep the cameras operating. The rest of us just lived with the discomfort. It fell into disuse, and the city of Detroit sold it at auction in 2010. It was fortunately purchased by Simeon and Nat Pyre. Since then, Simeon has successfully converted the building into a performing arts and event space. I gave this talk just a few days ago, and it turns out there were husband and wife in the audience that were just married there this past June in the studio. This is a photo of the Jam Handy studio at 2900 East Grand Boulevard, shot in 2001. I wanted to share it with anyone who remembers the studio from earlier times, and I also want to use it to illustrate one of the ways Jam Handy made sure everyone understood his core beliefs. He had signs on the outside of the buildings that described what the company did, such as these: communication, training, promotion, to make clear objectives and instructions. And if you drove down East Grand Boulevard in the era that Jam Handy was operating, you saw these signs on 6 or 8 buildings along East Grand Boulevard. And most people said, what's that all about? Inside the building, he had signs containing hundreds of helpful ditties for the employees, such as, get it done right, and have fun while you're getting it done. Or, visualize communication. Or, make the customer your guest. These signs reflected his values, and he expected everyone to live by them. The Jam Handy studio is located in what is known as Detroit's Jam Handy / North End - East Grand Boulevard Historic District. In 2014, the Detroit City Council charged the Historic Designation Advisory Board to study the proposed district. The report is very interesting. It can be found by Googling Jam Handy North End East Grand Boulevard Historic District. Very interesting stories about the historic history of each of these buildings along this East Grand Boulevard route. This is a map of the district, which is mainly on East Grand Boulevard from Woodward, which is over here, all the way over here to Hastings. 2900, the studio we're talking about, was located about here. 2821 was located here. This is where the main office was. And if you drive down here, there are still some of these buildings standing. But the building that I spent most of my time in when I worked there was located over here. It's now a parking lot. There was special recordings. This is a studio that we all use to do motion picture sound editing and narration recording. And then down here is interesting. 2921 was the building that Producers Color Service used. They were an independent film lab, and it's now the Oak and Reel restaurant. And when you drive past there, you can see in. They've got beautiful big windows. But when I was working with them, it was like a blockhouse. Because it's a film lab, they didn't want extraneous light, so there were no windows back then. So who was Jam Handy? A very short list of his achievements would have to include his entry in Ripley's Believe It or Not for swimming. He was the father of the industrial film industry. He created the concept of distance learning. He created the first musical comedy for a business meeting. His company produced more than 25,000 film titles. His company produced the first Technicolor business film for Coca-Cola. The Jam Handy organization helped the U.S. win World War II by producing 7,000 films and building aerial trainers for the Navy. He was a vendor partner of General Motors for over 50 years, and the successor company that I work for continues to exist today after 95 years. There are countless other achievements and interesting aspects to Jam Handy's life, which I'll elaborate on later in this presentation. This part of the story began on December 7, 1941, when the Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service attacked Pearl Harbor. The next day, December 8, 1941, President Roosevelt addressed a joint session of Congress, opening with the words, "Yesterday, December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. At the Jam Handy Organization Board meeting of that same day, Monday, December 8, 1941, Handy calmly told his board associates, "All of our projects from every client will probably be canceled today after yesterday's attack on Pearl Harbor. But don't worry, an America at war will need us more than ever." Indeed, the Jam Handy organization produced more films during World War II than the total produced by all Hollywood studios combined. What would give Jam Handy the confidence that he could be a major contributor to the war effort? Let's go back to the beginning. Jam Handy was the youngest of 7 children, born into a family of journalists. His mother, Sarah, wrote on domestic life for the Ladies' Home Journal. His father, Moses, was a political correspondent for newspapers in several cities, a syndicated columnist and publicist. All Jam's siblings were writers and journalists. Jam had a lifelong interest in helping people communicate more clearly. As you'll see, I've organized this presentation in chronological order because it's the best way to appreciate that Jam Handy lived the equivalent of 3 working lives. He started before most of us and finished after us. In between, he lived a very full life. You'll see his age displayed at the left of each event. When Jam was 7, the World's Columbian Exposition took place in Chicago from May through October to celebrate the 400th anniversary of Christopher Columbus's arrival in 1492. Jam's father organized the publicity. Jam persuaded his father to permit him to attend the exposition every day and not attend formal school. He was a good salesman even then. The Columbian Exposition, also known as the Chicago World's Fair, attempted to redefine America for itself and the world, and introduced many themes still prevalent in American life: technology and progress, corporations and the power structure, entertainment and education, and the triumph of the consumer culture. Young Jam Handy was exposed to all this, along with 27 million other visitors, nearly 1/4 of the country's population at the time. All the displays and exhibits undoubtedly left an indelible impression on Jam, who in later years frequently said that nothing goes in one eye and out the other. At 16, Jam entered the University of Michigan. He was 4 feet 11 inches tall and weighed 86 pounds. He was full of ambition to become a football star and a champion in all sports. Handy had chosen Michigan over other colleges so he could use its new 60-foot pool to indulge his passion for swimming. When he presented himself to football coach Fielding Yost, he was offered a position, but as a mascot, not a player. Handy was also a special correspondent for the Chicago Tribune, where his brother William edited the Sunday edition. Remember, he joined University of Michigan at 16. In 1903, at the age of 17, he was suspended, which was not an easy task in those days. The school was very tolerant of pranks and other forms of mob behavior, not considered acceptable today. His offense? As the campus correspondent for the Chicago Tribune, he published an article in which he described a session of Elocution 2 given by Professor Thomas C. Trueblood as a course in lovemaking, and said Trueblood had dropped on bended knee to demonstrate how to make an effective proposal of marriage. The illustration on the left here is from Trueblood's 1893 textbook, Practical Elements of Elocution, specifying the exact positioning of the feet for kneeling and expressing emotive sentiments, such as intense fear, terror, and consternation. The day after Handy's article appeared in the Tribune, Chicago Record Herald cartoonist John T. McCutcheon weighed in with a 3-panel rendering of Professor Foxy Truesport dreaming up ways to teach his class how to properly make love. Trueblood was not amused, nor was U of M President James B. Angel, or the faculty that convened 10 days after the article appeared and ordered Handy's immediate suspension for a year. They saw Handy's article as dishonest and harmful. Jam left, never to attend another university. J. Meadow McCormick, the feisty publisher of the Chicago Tribune, felt guilty and put him on staff, offering to give him a better education than he could get in a university. Jam was told that every time he thought he had mastered a job, he should ask for a new one. Consequently, he held 72 different jobs in 7 years. He also spent a lot of time swimming at the YMCA. At 18, he swam in the 1904 Olympics in St. Louis and won a bronze medal in the 440-yard breaststroke. This was the first time the Olympics took place outside of Europe. He regularly trained at 3 a.m. so he could invent and perfect new swimming strokes in secrecy. He introduced several strokes into American swimming. The first was the Australian crawl, which he'd read about in a newspaper. By using his unorthodox strokes, he had set, by the age of 19, 7 American and 13 world records. Frequently, his records lasted only for the time it took bigger, stronger men to learn the strokes. Chicago cartoonists liked to depict Handy's swimming successes against the larger competitors. At 24, he was promoted to assistant manager of retail advertising. He quickly noticed that they could move more merchandise by the simple secret device of informing and enthusing the salespeople on the values advertised. He researched why customers had made their purchases and explained that to the salespeople. Handy had discovered his calling. He soon left the Tribune to join with his first business partner, writer Herbert Kaufman, and begin the Kaufman and Handy educational advertising. Think about it, educational advertising. What an interesting concept. Their plan was to use pictures in business education and training. He began working with John H. Patterson at the National Cash Register Company, who was Handy's intellectual mentor and a strong believer in visual education. Patterson had assembled a library of tens of thousands of glass lantern slides picturing transactions, relationships, and industrial processes. Handy assembled these into logical narrative sequences. In 1914, he built on this to invent film strip projector gate, so that motion picture film could be used rather than the expensive and delicate glass lantern slides. The company actually then continued making film strips for years, well into the 70s and 80s. During World War I, he used these film strips for arms and submarine training. In 1924, he won an Olympics bronze medal on the water polo team. He was 38 at the time, and this was his second bronze medal 20 years after the first. A unique feat for which he was recognized in Ripley's Believe It or Not. His Illinois Athletic Club water polo team, including future Tarzan star Johnny Weissmuller. These Olympics were held in Paris, and here we are again 100 years later, and the Olympics were returned to Paris. Brief aside, as a result of his swimming prowess, he was made an honorary member of athletic clubs in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and others, beginning with the Detroit Athletic Club. He would keep his trademark blue suit, white shirt, and black tie, in a locker at several of these clubs and be able to travel on a moment's notice without packing a bag. This is a picture of taken from this time showing Jam Handy with his 3 children, left to right, Cheyenne, Sarah, and Jameson Jr. He was divorced about 10 years before this picture and remarried shortly after the picture was taken. His second wife, Helen, had a daughter named Mary who took the Handy name, and in 1932, Jam and Helen had another daughter, Dana. In 2001, I had a wonderful conversation with Jam's daughter, Sarah, better known as Sally. She lived in Rochester. I offered to provide transportation to the talk I gave them, and she didn't think she was up to it. Nevertheless, she was very happy that we were recognizing Jam's many professional contributions. She also wanted us to know he was a wonderful father who provided the most important things in life: positive self-esteem and a good education. Despite Handy's troubles at the U of M, his son-in-law Max Mallon, granddaughter Susan Webb, and great-granddaughter Catherine Tullis received degrees from the school. Handy would eventually receive an honorary doctorate from the University of Michigan. From Eastern Michigan University. Sally lived for many years with her husband Max Mallon in what is now Kings Cove in Rochester Hills. This photo from 1950 shows Mallon's cottage on the left, enlarged in the 1950s, and the house leased by Scott Mitchell on the right. I would like to thank Emily and Jeff Ferry and Jim and Connie Mallon for this family background. They live currently in Rochester Hills. In 1936, Dr. Max Mallon, a Detroit dentist, bought 125 acres for $4,000 at a foreclosure sale of a brick-making plant. After his eyesight began to fail, Mallon taught biology at Rochester Hills High School and served on the district school board. Sally also taught in Rochester schools. The purchase included the area that is now both Kings Cove and Cliffview Apartments. Scott Mitchell worked at the Jam Handy organization and in fact hired me in 1967. He was the best boss you could ever have. I was attending Wayne State on the GI Bill, and every quarter Scott would tell me to build my class schedule and then tell him when I could work. Scott's wife Mary went to Principia College with Sally, and Mary introduced her to Dr. Mallon. You may know Scott as Joni Mitchell's father-in-law. Now, when I'm talking to people in Rochester, this might ring a bell. But you may know Scott as Joni Mitchell's father-in-law. Joni and Chuck were married in 1965 in the backyard of that house on the right. Jam Handy did not live in Rochester. He lived on Kirby Street near the DIA in the Art Center apartments for the last 40 years of his life. He also had a home in Pacific Palisades, California, and a family cottage in Ocean City, Maryland. Both locations let him enjoy his passion for surfing and ocean swimming. In 1929, he began working with Chevrolet, which was desperate to catch up to Ford, using film strips, film charts, and eventually movies to train salespeople. In 1932, he moved the Jam Handy organization to Detroit and occupied offices and studios on East Grand Boulevard. Jam Handy had always been interested in animation, and the use of stop motion and animation combined with live action were among his many innovations. I have a few small samples of that coming up. In 1937, Jam Handy created the first industrial film in Technicolor for Coca-Cola. Throughout his career, Jam Handy focused on helping businesses use visual media to transmit their sales message to retail dealers in markets across a rapidly expanding country. The company became a business communications giant with more than 500 employees, complete film stages, studios, and laboratories, producer of traveling road shows and movies, and the country's largest contractor of theatrical talent. The film depicted by this poster is an example of what Handy called the mass selling program, which was introduced on March 11, 1935. Jam called it the greatest plan for putting ideas into men's heads that ever came into selling. He was susceptible to exaggeration at times. But these films show salesmen exactly how to conduct a sale, what to say, when to say it, and how to say it. It's like putting the sales manager in 1,000 places at once. Helping You Sell illustrates how Chevrolet used sponsored theatrical motion pictures to promote its products. These films were shown in clubs, theaters, and schools, anywhere a large gathering of people could be found. Now, with any luck, I'm going to click on this thing and the movie will start.
Many people fish with a single hook and line. By this method, however, they can only catch one at a time. Long ago, commercial fishermen learned to locate whole schools of fish, drop a net around them, and draw them in by the thousands. The mass method is the profitable one. Many farmers use a single plow. It is effective when you have only a small acreage to till. Farmers with thousands of acres to cultivate use great gang plows to turn many furrows at one time. In modern agriculture, machine methods are used through the whole cycle of farming. Mass farming is economical farming. In the early days of the automobile business, making a car was a slow, laborious, and expensive job, one car at a time. But today, with modern production methods, we make thousands of cars in the time formerly required to make one. Using the great principle of standardization, which has made possible mass manufacturing, direct mass selling has taken those parts of the sale which are the same for every prospect and is handling them on a mass production basis. Direct mass selling is as practical as mass fishing, as logical as mass plowing. It is doing for retail selling what mass production has done for manufacturing. Thousands of shoppers wanting thousands of things, and many manufacturers competing with each other to satisfy them. Manufacturers depend on advertising to make an impression on his market, and on retail outlets with salesmen to sell the goods. All manufacturers have the advantage of both these methods, but retail salesmen cannot reach all prospects with a full explanation and understanding of the features of a product. All automobile manufacturers have advertising, all manufacturers have retail outlets, and all have salesmen. And this is the job we were asking our retail salesman to do. We expected him to sell every prospect: the Chevrolet Institution, emergency performance, engineering features, manufacturing efficiency, durability and dependability, economy, appraisal, price, appearance, ordinary performance, and close the deal. Certainly we were asking our salesman to do more than any salesman could be expected to do. But remember, there are some of these things only the salesman can handle. Every good salesman is qualified to meet and handle any question on appearance. He is in the best position to demonstrate the car's ordinary performance, and only the salesman can handle price, appraisal, and close the deal. But we must help the salesman to handle all these other elements, because any one of them may be the determining factor in the sale. We can and do help him with advertising, the most powerful advertising in the industry. But competitors advertise too, with clever phrases that cloud the real issues and with claims our advertising cannot handle nor effectively disprove. And the best of salesmen can reach and do all of this selling work with only a limited number of people. That was the situation in the automobile business until March 11, 1935. On that date, we introduced direct mass selling. With this new method, we are bridging the gap between advertising and retail selling, beginning where advertising leaves off and continuing to where the salesman can and will go on. With direct mass selling, we are going into the dealer's community and reaching the young people of America in the high schools and universities who have so much influence in deciding what car the family will buy. We are going into the organized group and all classes of club meetings and reaching the influential business and professional men who have the money to buy our merchandise. We are going into the great factories, mills, and industrial organizations and reaching thousands of men and women on their payrolls, presenting a strong selling message which is winning the esteem and goodwill of industrial America. We are going into the community theaters in selected areas, reaching entire families in the dealer's community with entertaining pictures that give them an educational selling on exclusive Chevrolet engineering features. This completes the circle of community influences built up about the dealership through our selling work done in the dealer's neighborhood schools, selling work done among the employees of the industrial organizations, selling work done in the family showings at the community theaters. All of these factors working together are building up influences in the community which no dealer can create for himself.
So you get the idea. At this 1935, Jan Handy sort of created mass communication, right? The concept of bringing a large group of people together, and that influenced a lot of his thinking prior to and during World War II. In 1942, the Jan Handy organization entered World War II and eventually produced over 7,000 flight simulation, target practice training, and mass information films. Jan Handy accepted $1 per year in salary. The company received 6 Army Navy E awards for their education and training efforts. An E award, I wonder if you have a sample of one here. Do you have an E? Yeah. The Army Navy E award was an honor presented to companies and organizations during the war whose production facilities achieved excellence in production of war equipment. By war's end, the award had been earned by only 5% of the more than 85,000 companies involved in producing materials for the U.S. military's war effort. And they won 6 of them. After we entered World War II, the Jan Handy organization used many of the mass selling techniques to maintain support of the war effort. Remember, this is well before television. Victory is Our Business was released in theaters in 1942. Now that was 6 or 8 months after Jan entered the war. It shows what is being produced for the war effort and how quickly. Yeah. With luck, it'll work.
Behind locked doors and almost 100 General Motors plants throughout the country lie thousands of secrets, military secrets that Hitler would give his best panzer divisions to know. For in these plants is being designed and built a large part of the avalanche of weapons that will break the back of the Axis. Training men for the tremendous job of making, using, and maintaining the tools of war is of primary importance. Motors makes victory its business. Production mounts and new blood is added. Girls and women take their place in the line along with the men of industry. New hands, new tools, new plants, working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Where General Motors has undertaken to produce more than 10% of all war material fabricated from metal. Thousands of workmen in 4 GM divisions turn out machine guns on a mass production basis. Output is months ahead of schedule. And above the clattering death sting of machine guns will also sound the loud cough of cannon, anti-aircraft cannon, rapid-fire cannon. Each will carry with it the perfection and endurance of General Motors workmen. Trucks that are the workhorses of today's mechanized forces are sent by GM workers to every part of the world where there is action, where they are needed to win our fight. Trucks to keep our armed forces rolling on to Tokyo and Berlin. A word for power is diesel. Power for submarines, for military searchlights, for tanks that rumble through all obstacles into battle. This diesel power comes from 3 General Motors plants. Power in 1-cylinder portable units, in giant 16-cylinder engines, and in new and radically different diesel engines. Keep 'em firing. That's the slogan in GM plants where they are making shells and cannon that are now being used by our fighting forces, making them better and faster than anyone has ever made them before. In another General Motors division, thousands of workers are turning out cartridge cases for shells that are bursting in the faces of the enemies of freedom. Time is important, and General Motors has cut time 50% with a new process of casting parts for guns, tanks, and planes. The mechanized gear for war is born in cauldrons of molten metal. Machine gun mounts for the Army's new high-speed tanks have taken the place of peacetime products by General Motors. And instruments of uncanny precision, now manufactured by GM men and women, help to aim the demolishing gunfire of land and sea batteries. Roller bearings make our gigantic war machine run smoothly. Roller bearings for military trucks and diesel engines. Smaller bearings that ensure clock-like performance of delicate instruments. Bearings for America's mightiest battle wagons and for sleek sky fighters to keep them sailing, rolling, and flying on to victory. Machine tools, the master tools of industry and of victory, are made at a constantly increasing rate. GM radios are also a must to flash the commands of combat to tanks, planes, and every vehicle of war. General Motors' liquid-cooled engine powers Army's newest planes. The P-39, the famous cannon on wings, and the speedy P-38 are given the power to outfly anything on wings. 2 General Motors divisions are turning out air-cooled airplane engines, turning them out with the same know-how, the same mass production methods that went into the making of automobiles. In the first quarter of 42, 1 division turned out as many of these power plants as the production schedule called for by the whole first half of the year. And production is still stepping up at a rate that will soon put it a full 12 months ahead of the original schedule. Bombers to blast the way for our fighting forces. Parts and sub-assemblies for the famous B-25, the bomber with a reputation for giving Tokyo the first taste of its own medicine. In cooperation with the aircraft industry, General Motors has pioneered in applying mass production methods to the manufacture of aircraft. Work goes on day and night under the deft fingers of General Motors men and women. They are producing an avalanche of weapons for victory in General Motors manufacturing centers all over America. One of the most important of these centers is Dayton, Ohio, a city gearing up to the grim task of war. For Dayton is making victory its business. Dayton has a story to tell, the story of a city at war. Yes, the people of Dayton make the implements of war. Dayton men and Dayton women put the guns, the ships, the planes, the tanks, the armored cars, and the bombs in the hands of American soldiers.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it. Here's 1942. They're shooting in plants that are up and running. Clearly they started before 1941 to put plans in place to do this. we just couldn't declare war and officially do it until President Roosevelt helped declare war on. And not only did the Jam Handy organization produce training films, they also invented projection systems. A big contributor to the war training effort was the invention of the aerial gunnery trainer. Here's a photo of an aerial gunnery training system. It consisted of 2 projectors that provided kind of a wide-angle view for the students. Here's a plaque from the side of a dual projector aerial gunnery trainer used by the Navy, Marines, and Coast Guard. These People was released in 1944. It shows how a Frigidaire plant converted to military production during World War II. Actually, they began converting in early 1940, 16 months before the attack on Pearl Harbor. No doubt this conversion from consumer goods to wartime materiel was at the direction of William S. Knudsen. Knudsen was president of General Motors when in 1940, President Franklin Roosevelt asked Knudsen to come to Washington to help with war production. Knudsen was appointed as chairman of the Office of Production Management and member of the National Defense Advisory Commission, for which he was also received a salary of $1 per year. So let me start this one.
In any one day of the war, there is fighting on many fronts. This is one battlefront, the front on which American boys face the enemy. This is one front, and this is another front, spread over the face of America. Like the other fronts, it is big and complicated. So big that only a few men in the whole nation can understand its real capacity for waging war. Here is one small sector of this front, one American city. A city full of war industries, a city full of war workers. On the 926th day after Pearl Harbor, in the month of Allied invasion, one of the factories in this town celebrated an event, the manufacture of the 250,000 50 caliber machine gun for the armed forces. One machine gun, a deadly weapon. The 250,000. It may not seem strange that a factory should produce 250,000 machine guns, and the quantity production of 2 different types of propellers in one factory may not seem unusual. In addition to quantity production of hydraulic aircraft controls and many other kinds of war products. That is what factories are for, to produce things. The strange thing is that only a short time before, these factories were producers of electric refrigerators, the world's largest. Almost overnight, they became the world's largest producers of 50 caliber machine guns. In this factory, as in so many others in America, the people did something which tripped up the thinking of the enemy. The enemy knew we were manufacturers. They knew we had men. But they didn't know we could change our way of life enough to give our men the tools of war in overpowering quantity. The Axis didn't count this ability to change among our secret weapons. This is the story of what it takes to make such a change. The story of what ability to change means to all of us, now and after the war. Long before the manufacture of refrigerators was stopped, in fact 16 months before Pearl Harbor, plans were being made for the mass production of war products in this factory. How could the experience, the capacity, the manpower, the facilities of this factory best be applied to turning out products of war? After considering all important factors such as available factory space, machinery, workers, finances, and after the products were agreed upon, plant layout engineers made new production layouts and redesigned the factories to fit them. Out came peacetime machines, many of them to go into storage until after the war. Chaos is the word to describe the appearance of the factories while the changes were being made. New machinery was located, scarce machinery. Long before the factory was ready to hit its stride, the great job of training began. The job of replacing many of these men who were called to the fighting front. The job not only of replacing, but of adding. Women as well as men answered the call for more help. All these people had to be trained, for not too many had even seen the inside of a factory. A whole way of life exchanged for another. Many went from quiet retirement back to the job. From high school and college to the war production front. 16,000 is what it took to do the job, just in this one factory alone. And here they are, free Americans, working in a free enterprise. And here is what they learned. In the propeller plants, one of which was entirely new and the other formerly devoted to making refrigerators, the job is to take these rough forgings and turn out propellers like these. That's the job. Some of the people at the head of the production line learn to drill this hole in the bottom of the blade where connection is made with the hub. Form drilling taper bore in shank, that's called. Each one perfectly drilled, each one exactly like the next. Others learned about milling, the careful step-by-step operations which cut away unwanted metals seemingly like butter. Each milling machine taking off just the right amount of surplus. Each milling tool automatically following an ingenious master pattern to guarantee that thousands of propeller blades would be identical in every detail of contour. These people learned to grind the surfaces of the blades on batteries of grinding machines. They grind them to the smoothness of fine silverware, for the smallest nick can grow to spell disaster when the propeller is part of an American plane and is churning the air over 1,000 times a minute. Blades must measure exactly right. They must be just so thick and not a hair's width thicker. Specially designed gauges let these people know quickly whether they have to split a few more hairs to get it right. Others learned all about the fine art of balancing. That plastic shield was developed to protect the balanced blade from air currents in the factory. Any error in the weight of these blades is multiplied nearly 2,000 times in flight. And these people have been taught that any error on this front is failure on this front. Failure of a mission, loss of American lives. While all those people were learning about making blades, others found out that propellers have more than blades. They have such queer-sounding parts as barrels and spiders, the sturdy parts that hold the blades in position. They've got to be sturdy, for in flight, each blade tries to tear itself away from its hub with a force equal to the weight of a loaded freight car. Yes, there was a lot to learn in the barrel and spider departments, including hundreds of different checks and double checks. There are over 1,400 parts that had to be made and brought together and skillfully assembled. You're right. Nobody has to learn to put all 1,400 parts together. Each has his own job, and he knows that job almost well enough to do it blindfolded. That's the way it is in a big war plant. You've learned your job, and you're proud of it. But what a stranger you'd be if you worked on propellers and walked into the machine gun plant. These people know their jobs, just as you know yours. But they'd have to go into training to learn how to build propellers. All the jobs are different, yes, but they have a lot in common. For most of the jobs are precision jobs. Just as propellers have to measure and balance, just so, this machine gun bolt must be machined to extreme accuracy. The reason lies in the gun itself, the Browning caliber 50. This gun is the standard weapon of the Air Forces. It fires over 800 rounds a minute, blasting each bullet toward its target at a speed of more than half a mile a second. It takes 200 parts to make up this gun. Each moving part must slide past its neighbor with such smoothness and sureness that there will be the least amount of friction, the least possibility of jamming, the least vibration to interfere with the gunner's accurate aim. In addition, parts must be identical in measurement, so that any one of thousands of parts will fit any one of thousands of guns. Like peas in a pod is too loose a description for the similarity of these parts. They are literally factory-made, identical twins. Precision tools, precise ways of thinking about their jobs. That was the way the peacetime employees of the factory had to think, so precision was no stranger to them. The new ones learned quickly under skillful training. This is the Browning 50 caliber in quantity production, something unknown until this war, when production men let loose their talents on a problem which had been largely a hand production operation. Many changes in production thinking were suggested and accepted, and the total score of all the new ideas has been a revolution in machine gun manufacture. Modern manufacturing methods have increased the firing rate of the gun, saved raw stock for other vital war uses, replaced critical materials with non-critical materials, and resulted in production at 5 times the original schedule in improved quality with only twice as many machines and people, and at less than 1/4 the original cost. Here is a good example of new thinking applied to an old problem, preparing guns for shipment to the fighting fronts. These machine guns must be shipped to our fighting men all over the world. Temperature and climatic conditions from the heat of the tropics to the frigid north, from desert sand to corrosive salt water. Guns must be protected against all these elements of nature. Soldiers in the last war can well remember this scene. Guns packed in thick, heavy grease to provide the needed protection. 8 hours of slow, tedious cleaning. They don't do it that way in this factory. They seal each gun in a series of transparent, moisture-proof wrappings, like fine food being delivered to your home. Special drying material sealed inside provides a whole year's protection against the elements. In any part of the world, these guns can go immediately into action. This is typical of the contributions of American industry in supplying American fighters with the best of fighting equipment. In this case, the result of a manufacturer with specialized knowledge of moisture control, applying it to improve the effectiveness of a fighting weapon. New thinking, a new solution to an old problem, important in war, and opening up new peacetime possibilities in packaging. It is not hard seeing these factories to understand the result of the new thinking and of all the effort. One machine gun taking its place on one plane. All these guns equipping a giant sky fleet of thousands of planes, thundering out over enemy territory. You can look at one propeller and see an American fighter plane climbing for advantage over an enemy. You can see all these propellers and figure the bombing force they can pull over enemy ground. Staggering winged armadas, including the mighty superfortress, the B-29. But there is a hidden meaning to the whole story. Here, in the ability of American industry, in the ability of these people, of all the people in American industry, to meet and conquer a challenging new problem, is the secret weapon the enemy did not expect. Yes, and it's only in times of a great crisis that we ourselves fully realize that with our modern convenient way of life, we have the imagination that meets change with change, the hard fiber that matches effort with effort, the courage to put our real resources to work. That is our secret weapon. It's ours for use in war, for use in peace.
So that film released in 1944, right around D-Day. So the war was far from over. We had at least another year to go. But released this to theaters, clubs, and other things. Certainly brings a lot of support to the war effort from the general public. JAM continued his interest, and apparently the Navy still needed the trainers. So in 1952, they invented this 178-degree wide-angle lens for the Navy trainers to get away from the double requirement for the double projectors and synchronization and all of that complications. In 1964, they began using this Davy lens, as it was called, for a process called Cinesphere, which was then used by Chevrolet at state fairs and other places to give people the experience of a wide-angle trainer. And a brief aside, this is 1961 was the first time that I met Jam Handy. I was a lifeguard at the Detroit Boat Club, and a thunderstorm occurred, and of course I cleared the pool like you're supposed to do, and I was standing in our little office keeping an eye on the pool when here came Jam out of the men's locker room, and if you realize he was around 75 years old at that point, and I went running up to him and said, sir, you can't swim, there's lightning. And he just ignored me. I don't remember him grunting or anything, but he basically ignored me and went into the pool and did his daily workout. With another one of his invented strokes, in fact, the kids at the club used to call him the log, because he had this weird stroke where he kind of went in with one arm, and he sort of rolled over and came in again, and it was very amazing. But anyway, the log. That was my first contact with Jan Handy, the person. Well, this is an article in Popular Science magazine in 1955 talking about this hemispherical lens and the gunnery training. And this, you see on the lower right, that's the lens on this projector. It was enormous and heavy, but it solved the problem of 2 projectors. It's a photo of it. And then after the war, the Jam Handy organization returned to its roots, using all the techniques that it knew about motion picture training to teach salespeople about cars. And this is one of my favorites, actually not the total favorite. My favorite Corvair movie is a picture called Daring the Darien, where they took the Corvair from Chicago. They took a convoy, about 6 Corvairs and a couple of wreckers, and they drove from Chicago all the way down through Mexico on into Central America, across the Darien Gap into Panama. And their goal was to prove that the Corvair was as durable a car as any. But I can't find that film anymore. It used to be on the archives and so on, but it seems to have disappeared. But this is an interesting Corvair movie.
If you're like most people who are interested in the Corvair, you want to know what it can do in action, out on the road. You want proof that the Corvair can deliver the goods, give you more of what you're looking for in a compact car. And here it is, dramatic proof that the Corvair delivers the goods as no other compact car can. Years ago, in its early development stages, Chevrolet engineers began testing disguised Corvairs, began making the Corvair a road car. They made it a compact car with power, traction, and ruggedness. They put into the Corvair a suspension system to tackle the roughest road and level it off for its passengers. Chevrolet designers and engineers used all their know-how to make this 1960 Corvair the compact car that people could count on. But they didn't stop there. There was more testing, double-checking, retesting. Here at the challenging Lime Rock, Connecticut Raceway, the 1960 Corvair was really put through its paces, made to prove itself. And it did. It proved its stability, and then some. Just watch how the Corvair stays under control in this situation. Now see how the Corvair proved its maneuverability and ease of handling. Watch the Corvair handle some rough going. Look at that fender line. See how level the Corvair's body stays. Now watch the Corvair prove that it's got the power, the traction, the stamina to go just about anywhere. highway, the Corvair actually plowed along like this for over 20 miles. And not once did its reliable turbo air engine falter. Now watch this sample of how the Corvair can stop. Now they're making it tougher for the Corvair brakes. That slippery foam they're putting on the road, the same type used on runways to help disabled planes slide into safe belly landings. Watch the Corvair handle it. What more could they ask the Corvair to do? Well, just look. The Corvair proved its ruggedness in special crash tests. Not once, but over and over again. Just to see how it would stand up, they tried to make the Corvair roll over. It wouldn't. They locked the wheels, so it had to roll over. The Corvair took the punishment and asked for more. Yes, sir, the Corvair's as good as she looks. Corvair power, ruggedness, maneuverability, handling, traction, braking, all proved again and again. Not much doubt about it, is there, that this is the car that gives you more of what you're looking for in a compact car. Sure, the Corvair has more, and the Corvair is ready and able to prove it.
So Ralph Nader sure had it in for the Corvair, right? Seems like quite a car. My wife had one for a number of years and loved it.
My parents did too. My dad.
Okay, so then, this is a little bit later, 1966. This is a film segment that was used as part of a dealer meeting. That's kind of interesting. I'll show a little bit of it.
Some things are meant to endure. Your 1966 Chevy 2 is one of them. A tough, durable, practical automobile, it was designed to give years of maximum service at minimum cost of upkeep and operation. How well has Chevy 2 lived up to its original promise? Listen to the voices of the people who know. First, a Chevrolet Proving Grounds engineer.
In the 35,000-mile durability test, Chevy 2 came out with the least repairs of any of the 39 competing cars.
A Chevrolet Service Department engineer.
Ever since Chevy 2 first came out 4 years ago, its warranty and policy costs have been consistently lower than any other car under Chevrolet warranty.
But for the most telling comment of all, let's go to San Diego, California, where the Yellow Cab Company operates a fleet of 140 Chevy 2 taxicabs. As you know, one of the worst things that can happen to a car is to become a taxicab. For cabbing is a continual round-the-clock endurance run. 60,000 miles a year of grueling stop-and-go driving that goes on and on until the car literally falls apart. How are these 140 Chevy 2 cabs standing up to the brutal punishment of taxi cab service? Listen to Charles Pratt, president of San Diego Yellow Cab Company.
We're extremely happy with the Chevy 2. We've used them now for 4 years. We've had good driver and passenger reaction to them, and they have stood the gaff real well.
What about operating costs?
Well, operating costs are substantially less than standard model car for several reasons. One, we have longer brake life. Car weighs a lot less, so we can get by with a different licensing fee, which is a substantial saving to the operator. Good gasoline economy, of course, is a big factor also.
How do you think Falcons would work out in taxi cab service, Mr. Pratt?
Well, I don't know, from the things we hear from other operators around the country, nothing compares to the Chevy 2 as far as our costs are reflected.
Are you going to continue buying Chevy 2s, Mr. Pratt?
Yes, I just ordered 40 more of the 66 models.
Listen to Ross Dowers, shop foreman, San Diego Yellow Cab Company.
The Chevy 2s are averaging around 140,000 miles before a major overhaul. Some of them have gone 200,000 miles before we've even had the head off.
Listen to the driver.
Well, the Chevy 2 is a real first-rate car. It gets you where you're going, and it's important. You don't make money standing on the street corner waiting for a tow truck. You gotta have a car you can depend on.
Like a Chevy 2?
That's right, like a Chevy 2.
Sure, I like the Chevy 2 fine. It handles like a baby carriage. That's important, too. You ain't so tired at nights.
Let's face it, it's a hell of a car.
And that's the story told by the people who know. Though Chevy 2 is more beautiful this year than ever before, though it ushers in whole new dimensions of style and luxury, it's still the car with the unmatched record for toughness, economy, and long-lasting durability.
Demolition Derby.
The Demolition Derby. This is part of your 1966 Chevrolet selling story. For Chevrolet value, Chevrolet resale, Chevrolet guts and strength and dependability run long and deep and far into the life of an automobile. Till cars get to here, and till cars get here. 6 million cars a year end here. Since Chevrolet has outsold everybody over the last decades by wide margins, you'd think more Chevrolets would be scrapped. But just the reverse is true. More Chevrolets keep running, giving service, while more Fords wear out and come to the end of the line. The actual scrappage figures for a recent period present a very startling picture. 1956 Chevrolets scrapped, 184,000. Fords, 302,000. 55 Chevrolets, 289,000. Fords, 375,000.
You get the idea. I forgot to mention the other film about the Frigidaire plant making 250,000 50 caliber machine guns. We have one here, right?
Yes.
In the back corner. So if you ever want to see what an actual 50 caliber machine gun looks like, go back there. In 1971, Bill Sandy had been a senior vice president in charge of the work done for Chevrolet and other GM divisions for several years. No doubt Jan Handy saw in Bill Sandy many of the traits he admired: creativity, vision, and appreciation for salesmanship and hard work. Most important, Bill was an excellent writer. Although Jan Handy never intended to retire, and he never did, he wanted to cut back on his corporate work. He encouraged Bill to create a company and carry on with the Chevrolet account. In 1983, Jim Handy died at the age of 97 after living a very full life. As I said earlier, I'm convinced he lived about 3 lives. He started earlier and finished later. I want to pay tribute to Bill Sandy, who passed away just this past April. As shown in these photos, Jan Handy knew Bill would carry on his traditions. Bill created a company that continued to provide sales training, distance learning, standards-based process improvement, and other services to clients around the world. It became a public company in 1986 and was sold to ADP in 1996 upon Bill's retirement. The company carries on today after transforming itself a few more times. Bill was survived by his wife of 72 years, Margie, and 3 children, 8 grandchildren, and 7 great-grandchildren. In closing, I want to thank Jam Handy for inventing an industry and Bill Sandy for carrying on the vision. I worked for Sandy Corporation for 44 years and at Jam Handy 9 years before that. I look forward to every day because the company evolved along with our clients. There are always new things to learn and teach. It was very rewarding. Thank you. In case anyone's interested, there's the sources that I used in building this presentation. Thank you. Thanks, Chris, for inviting me.
Thank you for being here.
I think I'm going to go for a walk around the exhibits now. You know what? I should have asked if there's any questions. I'm sorry.
I heard of the Sandy Corporation. It's just interesting that he just passed away this year, and both him and Bill Sandy and Jam Handy lived very long, full lives.
Yeah, they did. They did. Yeah. Yeah. Mary Jo, yes.
I couldn't help but think, wonder, when that Corvair looked over the 3 times.
Right.
They had seatbelts, or was it not?
Right. I think 1960. I'm not sure if seatbelts were in yet.
They were out front that time. I don't think they made them mandatory like 65.
Right. There was a big debate about, there was disagreement among engineers and manufacturers and all that about car safety. Some people thought seatbelts would be dangerous. You'd be locked into the car and you'd die. You're better off flying out the window or something, you know. And it took a long time to prove that you really are safer if you're strapped into the car and it's got that cage around you, you know. But it took a long time to convince people that that was a good idea. And I think you're saying about 65 was when seatbelts came in?
Well, that's the song. I was working at Chrysler in the 70s, and that's when, if you notice, we had to get rid of the hard tops.
Yeah.
Because the tops were literally caving in.
Right.
We didn't have the jaws of life.
Yeah.
So like in Rose back here,
Yeah.
I would have to take the wrecker, pull the cars apart.
Yeesh. Yeah.
Speaking of the Chrysler car, my dad had a 64 Chrysler, and during the 60s I was a little kid. And I remember that it didn't have seat belts. Because like you said, after it's 65.
Right. Then they came in.
Brought that to my attention. I knew that they put seat belts in the cars later on because I read other friends and relatives' neighbors' car.
Yeah.
And they had seat belts. But I wonder when the seat belt law became mandatory, especially in the front seat. When was that? It was
Around then, around the late 60s.
Let's tell you a little story.
I thought so, a long time.
In the Chrysler labs, they had with your seatbelt, if you didn't fasten your seatbelt, the car wouldn't start.
Oh, wow.
And then what happens is then you have to call somebody to reset.
Right.
So we had to take that over the cars.
Well, here we are today. I mean, if you don't put on your seatbelt, it beeps at you, right?
Yeah.
You know.
Put your ticket.
But it was literally the very first ones would not let the car start. And we had to remove that because some of the Chrysler engineers had hung up on the road.
Right.
I worked in the Chrysler labs in Highland Park.
Yeah.
68, they were mandatory.
Oh,
Just
I
go
think it was a
with it?
long
Yeah.
time.
Of course.
It was like driving when I rolled over with the seatbelt on.
You were driving a
Not a Peugeot,
Renault.
A Renault.
Marilyn, she rolled
Oh, I
a
had the
Renault.
sign.
But she had her seatbelt on.
Yes, I think it was a northbound John Lodge sign.
Oh,
And my car spun around
and I rolled until I hit a bridge and ended up upside down. And I remember thinking, I was hanging there upside down in the car thinking, gosh, I gotta get this belt off. Maybe I better grab my purse and crawl out the window, crawl out the window. So when I saw the car, I was terrified. So I ran up to the hill of the expressway where the service drive was. So I'm standing up there, looking down at this thing, standing there the longest time. The police car comes up. And they get out and I'm looking in the car, looking in the car. When they look up and they said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm in the car."
Yeah.
Wow.
That was 1971.
You walked away.
Yep.
Yeah.
I pulled a muscle in the shoulders. I didn't have the seatbelt on.
You should have had a Chevy when they rolled over.
Yeah, right. That's right. That's right. Right.
Coincidentally, I attended a presentation on Thursday at the Pontiac Transportation Museum called The Arsenal of Democracy in Oakland County. It was stunning about Knudsen and Pontiac manufacturing, of course, in the war.
Yeah.
And Oakland County, obviously. I was stunned to find out that General Motors produced 41% of World War II products.
Wow. Wow.
And they had much more detail about all the guns, all the missiles, all just everything. The ducks, because the ducks were produced in Pontiac and Deuce and a half trucks.
Yeah.
Almost 1 million of them.
Yeah, Michigan sure played a role.
Where was that again?
The Pontiac Transportation Museum. Yeah, it just opened up in the spring.
Where is it located?
It's in a school in downtown, it's in a old elementary school, 1970s. You guys don't know about the
We're not
transportation
familiar with
museum?
that. Yeah.
Terry Connolly is the director. He's a retired GM engineer. He gave the presentation. I've known him for a few years now because I've been going. I belong to a few car collector organizations, and I own a GM motorhome. So I've been involved in their activities.
Question for you. So mid-60s, you were working for Jam Handy?
I started in '67.
Okay, so did you ever attend any of the Jam Handy picnics?
Yes.
My brother and I did.
I
because we
attended
had a brother who
one
worked.
picnic.
Okay.
And then I think the next
They
time.
were incredible events.
Yeah, the next time I was out of town.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, they were wonderful. At the Ivory, at the Ivory Farms.
Ivory Farms, because it was a huge.
It was out near Holly.
Okay.
In that area. Yeah.
Yeah. It was pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
Yeah, our oldest brother worked there for a while in the 60s, and I remember him taking us to the picnic.
Yeah. What did he do you think?
We were trying to remember exactly. It was an entry level something what he was doing for, but he worked for a few years there. In the mid late 60s.
Sure.
Yeah, we just remember going there. It was a huge family picnic.
Yeah, that was great. Oh yeah. Well, they had 500 employees. You know.
The organization was in business until when?
Well, Jam Handy officially until 1971.
71, and
That's
then
when Bill Sandy took over.
went into Sandy Corporation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Those old films were really something.